Good morning. Hi. Good. Nice to see some more people on the call today. Hi, Sarah. What a nice surprise.
Coach Sarah in the house.
Yeah. Coming off of a fast 50K.
Yeah.
How are
Hi
you
guys.
feeling?
I've missed the Friday call, so I thought I would jump on today.
Awesome.
It's exciting to see you.
Yeah.
More the
great to see
merrier,
you.
always.
Yeah. Really enjoyed listening to your call on Monday, Sarah. Thought you guys did such a great job talking about, yeah, developing the why and the importance for the why and all that. If you guys haven't heard that call yet, I recommend it. I think there's some really great little bits of wisdom and advice in there that I found helpful for myself, and I know that you guys will too.
Thanks. Yeah. And I have gotten positive feedback from some athletes on that. So I just reiterate, if you haven't checked out that call, that it sounds like people enjoyed it. So I recommend it.
Totally. Yeah. So important. Gosh, and I think with the holidays coming up and everything, running can often feel really stressful during times like this. At least it really does for me, as I get conflicted between spending time with family and you know, that's what my number one probably priority, especially during the holidays, and it just becomes challenging. I think sometimes just having a strong understanding of your why, and even, you know, Kylee mentioned the why roadmap a few weeks ago. But anyways, I kind of want to get into that more on Monday. We're going to do a bit of a call on just trying to how to prioritizing running around the holidays and managing those stresses. So I hope you guys can join then for that one. That'll be our last call for 2021. Gosh, it's already the end of the year, basically.
2022.
So crazy.
I thought it was still 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got some other questions to do today. Yeah, Sarah, you Drew and Kristen have already you guys have already answered these questions. So you'll remember we're doing a coach athlete kind of experience call. These questions came from, or were inspired by, one of our athletes, Max. He is a community organizer up in the Pacific Northwest, and he always has these just like really, he sends us from time to time just like really, I think, strong questions, thought-provoking, introspective questions. So I thought we'd do that today, as we've been kind of saving these for a while. I guess we'll just jump right in.
Just jump right in. No preface needed.
Oh my gosh, you seem caffeinated this morning.
We were both up at 5, just ready to go.
Mm-hmm. I drove all the way to Whole Foods to try to get my favorite Abe's coffee cake, which is my favorite morning breakfast, pre-run food. And Whole Foods was closed. I was so disappointed. But I did get plenty of coffee, so that's great.
So well, we haven't eaten a lot. We've had a lot of caffeine.
Yep. And yeah, I'm sure most of you know what that feels like. All right, cool. So yeah, I mean, we'll try to get through these. I don't know if we'll have enough time. We're long-winded. Maybe we'll just go around the horn between you, Zoe, Kylee, and myself on these. And hopefully, yeah, there's some things that you guys can relate to or whatnot in here. If something comes to mind, I would encourage you to use the chat box, or you can, I think there's a raise hand function. I saw that the other day on my HOA Zoom call, a raise hand function. If you want to speak, you can raise your hand, and we'd all be glad to listen to you guys too, because these questions I think are, just as much for us as coaches. Maybe we've got a little bit more experience, but I know you guys have probably gone through or have thought about a lot of this stuff too. Cool. We'll just start at the top, huh? Great. What is something you as an athlete have learned in the lead up to a big a big race or event of your own?
Do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. I was thinking about this one yesterday. Something that I feel like in early on in my, I think, competitive running days, I was really emphasizing the necessity of like nailing every long run, nailing every workout, really being not just like consistent, but like being like executing my training days to like perfection.
Perfection. We love that.
Yeah, we have a strong perfectionist tendencies in our household, and we are developing a very holistic understanding of some of the limitations of that kind of mindset and thinking. And yeah, I think, especially this season, I've really started to learn that it's not about any one workout, any one day. It's about the accumulation of a lot of experiences over time that lead up to, really great performance outcomes. And and just in thinking back on my season, I had a really bad ankle sprain. I missed 7 days of running kind of during the buildup to my last 50 miler, and taking 7 days off is pretty significant at my level. And I really had to kind of fall back on those understandings that it's about the accumulation of time and experience, and not necessarily like, we hear a lot of people say time on feet, right? Like I did a walk, that counts as training. Well, no,
time on feet is the worst. Don't do it.
Running experience and race experience. And so, yeah, I think, if I was to kind of give everybody a piece of advice, and I know it's so much harder the newer you are to the sport, but don't feel like you have to do anything perfectly. And I was talking with an athlete about this week. Don't feel like your hill strides need to be at 10 out of 10 effort every single time, that your tempo run, has to be at 6:15 minute per mile because that's like the best you've ever done at a tempo one time before. Like, hold those things loosely, listen to your body, give your body what it needs. Never exceed more than maybe 80 or 90% of your like full capacity in any workout. Go easier than easy on your easy runs. The idea of like needing to be perfect, needing the lead up to any race to be perfect, to be successful, just isn't true. And I think that it's more of a matter of your own perspective and mindset when you're going into these things that really, in the end, dictates whether you have a good outcome or not. What do you guys think? What's something, Zoe, that you've learned? I mean, you've had some really big, you crushed basically your first 100 as a coached athlete this season. What did you learn like in the lead up to that race?
Mostly just that like training should never feel overwhelming. Like there was no, like, even when I hit like a 95-mile week, it was like fine. And like, I remember that week came about the same time that I was really busy getting an issue of trail runner out the door, but I time managed and stress managed in a way like where I, just like really planned ahead, because I was like a little bit nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to do like a 15-mile run on a Wednesday. That's a lot. But it was like fine. And then, I did like a 50K on Saturday, just came home, ate a bunch of food, slept a ton, got up the next day and ran 20 miles. And I just remember being like, wow, like I feel really great. Like I don't feel tired. I don't feel like bedraggled. Like I'm not having to trick my body into training. I feel really good. And I think that that's how training should be. And I think sometimes I or other athletes can have a tendency to be like, well, if I'm not exhausted, then like, what's even the point? And I think that, particularly when you have life stress and you're trying to make a magazine entirely on your own, like training should feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, then that doesn't mean you're not enough. It means the training needs to be adjusted, or like potentially you're not ready for the goals you're going for. Like if by the time you get to the start or finish line of a race and you're just like, I can't wait for this to be over so I can rest, then like that probably wasn't a super appropriate goal for you. And like, I was like, tapering for that 100, I was like, man, I just miss running. And then even, when I took like 10 days off after the 100, I was like, I still miss run. Like I was like so far from burnout. Like I was just more excited to run than ever.
I think that's such a good just indication of the fact that your goals were in kind of strong alignment with your why, with the other kind of, and the approach to those goals was in strong alignment with the other kind of very significant life stresses that you've had. And this, to be honest, and not everybody knows all of the comings and goings that happen here, but 2021 and 2020 have not been easy years, especially for you at Trail Runner. I think that it's, like, I don't know how you do that and show up for your athletes the way that you do and your own training. I mean, I certainly don't feel like I am at all capable of doing that. And I think it's when you finish something so big like that and you realize like, damn, I'm more stoked now. Like this is truly the impetus for like whatever's coming next. That to me, that means, this elusive balance, maybe the balance wasn't perfect, but you're flirting with something good there. And that's an important, and that's really important. That's a strong indicator that, things are in good alignment with your values, with your why, all of these kind of bigger picture things that really create, I think, what I would call sustainability, not just in career, but in athletic, not in work career, but in athletic career. Because the easiest thing to go when life gets hard is like something that you're passionate about, but that doesn't make you money. And that's,
not currently making a ton of money.
That's running a 100-miler, it's like I tell it,
net loss.
And that's kind of the truth with all of this, as athletes, we're building awareness all the time. This awareness of like, wow, what are the real impacts of like this stress that I'm having at work? Oh, I didn't feel as good on my run, or my sleep was impacted. Well, we can't change like that. We need to work. We often can't take a vacation or get that extra day off or call in sick, whatever it is. It can't take just like a mental health day sometimes is even hard to take as much as, we want it. And the first thing that goes out the window for everybody is training. And I would encourage you guys, like, instead of tossing it out the window altogether, give yourself grace. And you did this so many times, and make a fine adjustment. If it's not 10 miles, we're doing the lower end of volume, or we'll do a little bit less. We'll just stay consistent. And that keeps you engaging with something that you enjoy, but also keeps you in alignment with your long-term goals. And that's like the easiest thing to adjust when life is crazy.
Because I can't like do less at trail running.
Right.
Like I can't call my boss and be like, sorry, not feeling it. My whoop score is low. Like no matter, the reality is, and for like a lot of folks, like no matter how you feel, you have like a certain amount you have to get done in a day. So because I can't like be less of a boss, I can't, write less really. Like I have to adjust the training side of it, or I can up my input, right? Because it's like, if you can grow your capability pie, like if you, eat more, sleep more, meditate more, like do things to help improve recovery, then you're able to accommodate more stress and more load. Not to say that like, you can just like stress yourself out infinitely and then like meditate and tell yourself you're fine, but there are ways to improve your inputs.
Absolutely. Gosh, it's just been such a cool
but like I think
process.
Basically like the big lesson was like training should not be that hard. Like there should definitely be moments that are challenging, but like I never once felt overwhelmed.
No, and you crushed that big week. I remember you had a little bit of anxiety about it going into it, and I did too. I had a really,
I was just like nervous I was going to be tired and like I wasn't gonna be able to like do work. And like, again, that was like one of the last weeks I had to like finish an entire issue of Trail Runner and like hire a new assistant. And there was a lot going on, but that was kind of like when I needed to do a peak week. So I was kind of like, well, I have to do all this and I need to train this amount. Like, what is my plan of action?
But how cool is that though, when it's like all said and done, to look back and be like, look at what I just did. Like I was able to like train at this level that I've always imagined myself training at, while also, like really crushing it like on a big work week.
Yeah, that was
like
nice.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Kylee, I'm ready. I want to hear from you about kind of something that you've learned.
Well, obviously I haven't raced in 2 years, so that's going to be a little bit more difficult, but
look out for a big Lotse and Ellie adventure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I can still speak to the question, even though I haven't really raced in a while. And on that note, I would say being like learning to be grateful for like the times that you are healthy and that you can run. Because I've been running for so long, since I was 10, and that I was lucky enough until my like late 20s to not really get injured, and then had like a freak foot incident on the trail, and then had foot surgery, and so have had issues since then. But yeah, like being grateful for the times that you're able to put together training, and being grateful to be out there. And it ties in with like what you guys were talking about with your why. Running it to me is so much more than just competing. It's like a place to like go and be out there in a peaceful environment and be out with friends and dogs and that sort of thing. And so I think it's nice. Like I'm gonna try to race again next year. It's awesome to get out there and compete, but there's other things that running and even other sports can do for your life. And so for so long, I think I held on to this idea. Since I was younger, I was trying to get a college scholarship and like then trying to qualify for the Olympic trials. And it was always based on like some kind of competitive idea, or like this idea maybe that I was putting pressure on myself. No one else really was doing that except for me. And so coming to that realization that it's okay to do this for other reasons as well. So I think that would be my learning experience in a recent racing setting, I guess. Not really recent, but
I love that.
That's huge though.
More time with dogs.
Like so key.
More
you
dogs.
have to, and I really like that you're continuing to develop, I don't know, like more of a holistic, understanding of what the training and the running really means to you. I feel like that ties directly into kind of just how important it is for all of this to relate back to your values and your why and all of that. I think it would be probably understandable if after all of the kind of like the foot setbacks you've had, Kylee, if you just like were like, I'm not running anymore.
I'm not meant to be a runner.
Yeah, and we've seen that, with athletes that we've worked with. And so it's just really cool to see you like working through that in a way that is, I don't know, really meaningful to you, or just connects to your values and your why. And I think that's true sustainability.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go on to the next one. Maybe if time allows, we'll get through a few more of these. I really like these questions. What is something you as a coach have learned by coaching athletes in the lead up to their big events? I'm going to start us off, Zoe.
You can have real crap training and still rock a race. Like I've seen people just go through, the life ringer, and we've reduced volume and we've, like accommodated and like wiggled stuff around, and people have like had long runs where they wanted to quit, or like have had weird injury scares where we have to take like a month off. And then when people treat themselves well, when you are kind to yourself, you will always do better than if you're just like mean to yourself and abuse your body. Like being mean to yourself, like always the athletes who are mean to themselves are like almost doing it as like a form of self-sabotage and like preventing themselves from being vulnerable. And I think that when people are actually able to like take care of themselves and be kind to themselves and like do what they need to do in training to like not be hurt or sick or miserable, like a happy athlete is a healthy athlete and a healthy athlete is a fast athlete. And that's kind of it. Like people who are good to themselves are better runners than people who try to like beat their bodies and minds into submission and try to like make their lives just like in a vice grip of like running.
Oh my God, there's so much that comes to mind. Kylee, what are your thoughts?
Mine would probably be remembering like the actual like journey of the experience going up to an event, because I find that some athletes just get like so nervous or like put so much pressure on themselves that then like race week they're just freaking out. And I find that, I mean, this is something I learned when I was racing a lot, that like if you are overly anxious or just worried about these things that might be a little bit out of your control, that can affect your entire experience. And so trying to kind of just remain like grounded, remember the whole experience of the training. And like, you know, a lot of us do like a little pep talk coaches email week of the race, and it's kind of reminding people about that whole journey that they just went through. And then realizing that like this is kind of like the icing on the cake, like you worked really hard for this, and go out there, and no matter what happens, you know, everything's going to be okay. So
Yeah, it's true. No one has died racing yet.
Gosh, I mean, both of you guys, I think you raised some like really good points. I really like the thoughts on, yeah, the importance of remembering the overall journey that you mentioned, Kylee, kind of like the idea that the finish line, it really wouldn't have the meaning that it actually does have in, you know, if you hadn't gone through all of the highs and lows of the training process and like building towards that race. And I think, you know, that it kind of goes without saying, you know, if finishing was a given, none of those things would mean nearly as much. And so kind of that reflection part of this, and we've talked about this on a previous call about deep thinking. It's just so important for athletes to go through that kind of internal introspective, and it doesn't have to be like a deep meditation, but just yeah, taking some time to remember like, wow, you've gone through like this incredible journey. It's an amazing accomplishment. And I think, gosh, one of the, I guess, you know, this kind of leads me to so many things I could say for this question. But I will say one of the things that I've learned is it's important to have a reflection period for athletes after a big event. I constantly am pumping the brakes, asking athletes to pump the brakes after a race, because so many people have the tendency, they finish their race, they haven't even digested just how incredible it is that what they've accomplished and what they've done, and they're already signing up for their next race. It's like, first I did this amazing thing, I'm signing up for a 50K in 3 weeks, you know, whatever it is. And I'm always like, you've got to pump the brakes. Like that way of thinking, it really discredits the amazing accomplishment that you've had. And sometimes that goes hand in hand with like overthinking a race. And this kind of relates back to what Zoe mentioned, which is that like, we all have inner critics to some extent. Some people have stronger inner critics than others. Other people, you know, we're all in in flux, I think, with that. And that's okay. But the post-race, like almost like this avalanche of self-criticism and all of these things that I need to work on now. And what do I need to work on now to do better,
And like,
later?
9 times out of 10, our answer is just gonna be like, oh, just train for like 5 more years.
Yeah.
Because like, that's like the scale that it takes to like really improve at these things. Like, it's very hard to be like, well, if I do another 50K in 3 months, like, sure, there's like things like fueling, like things that you can improve, but like the big stuff that we're really working on, like building an aerobic foundation, like improving running economy, those are biological systems that change on the scale of years, not days or months.
Totally. And I think that's why it's just so, like, I think one of the biggest things that like I've learned by coaching athletes is that taking some time for reflection after a race, not only does that I think help an athlete to like emphasize just like how profound what they've done is, but also kind of like pumps the brakes on like that inner critic. Like, I have all of this data now that I can use to like go and crush another race later. And it just kind of slows that process down. So we can remember that, like, what really good training is taking space. Really good training is then like actually doing, a well thought out and executing a plan to get to that like next start line. We all have a tendency, and I think especially athletes who are less experienced, to just go from one event to the next to the next. And in my experience, that can kind of create a scenario in which a lot of athletes end up eventually burning out, or they have these like existential crises where like, I'm not an athlete if I don't have a goal on my schedule all the time.
I had an athlete be like, I haven't even run an ultra this year. Am I still an ultra runner? And I'm like, no, turn in your card. We're on to you. Like, everyone cares and is noticing that you didn't even run an ultra this year. Like, no one cares. Like, I've gone years not running an ultra. I'm still whatever,
You're still an
like
ultra runner.
however you race doesn't make you like, doesn't like actually impact your identity at all in a meaningful way.
Totally. Yeah. Cool. Well, I hope you guys got something out of that. It looks like the chat box was lively. So I appreciate the comments, guys. Thank you. Okay, cool. What is something you as an athlete have learned about yourself through racing? Kylee, you want to start with this one? I know you haven't raced in a while.
Yeah, but I've done a lot of racing throughout my years.
Exactly.
I would say that, I'm stronger than I may originally like think I am, or than you may think you are, I guess. And to the point being that, like, sometimes I think we put limitations on ourselves when we go into an event, and then we end up like surpassing those because of like our internal like mental strength or fortitude. And so just kind of testing I think that's one of the reasons why I like racing, is because you can kind of test yourself and like see how far you can push yourself to overcome maybe what you think are your limitations when you're going into it doesn't even have to be a race. It could be like something else in your life, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like that is something that everybody who races and has done, whatever it is, set a big goal for themselves and then gone after it can relate to. I think especially with running, because like no matter what the distance is, there's always those moments where self-doubt starts to creep in. You're like pushing that 5K effort and it hurts. And like, then it really starts to hurt, and that self-doubt creeps in, and you have to try to figure out like, it's a rise up moment, and you have to say, I'm capable of so much more. And this is the time where I can, really show that I am, and maybe prove to myself that I'm capable of more. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Zoe?
Mostly just that I race best when I like race my own way.
Tell me more about that.
I race very relaxed, very non-strategically, very fun and with a lot of food.
Non-strategically, you're like your fun thing is like your strategy though.
Yeah. I mean, my strategy is to like be I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but like to just be myself. Like it's so easy to get caught up in like what other people are doing or like how TJ races or like how the other woman I'm competing against race. And I always race my best when I'm just like having fun, being myself, making friends.
And eating gels. Zoe loves to eat gels.
Dude, I can eat. I know whenever people are like, am I supposed to eat gels for my entire 15-mile run? I'm like, I only eat gels for my 100. So don't even like
4 gels an hour. We have to tell you to stop eating so
I
many
was
gels.
like, because like that was the one thing I felt like I could really control. So I was just like, I know the thing that I can do for like 19 hours is just like take in 4 gels an hour and like drink some Coke.
That was epic.
That's like what it looks like to practice and execute a fueling strategy. So no excuses, y'all. Whenever people are like, oh, I was struggling to get 200 calories an hour. And I'm like, wait till you see this footage of me yelling at TJ because he's not giving me enough gels. You get very intellectually compromised running a 100.
Develop a very strong skin.
Yes.
As a pacer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's just like, for me, it's about like just being myself and like not trying to like pretend to be serious if I'm not, and like not trying to pretend to be anything I'm not, and just showing up fully as myself.
That's awesome. I just think that that's, again, boom, like everybody, if you didn't hear that, like listen to this again later, rewind that part and listen to that like over and over again. I think that so many of us are influenced by what, you know, we talk about in our house is like false reference points, you know, like what are other athletes doing, especially like our peers, people who are of the same level as us, or in our running groups, or like, you know, friends of ours that are also competing, or other, you know, pros, whatever it is. And that sometimes influences the way that we behave, or the way that we race, or the way that we train, or the way that we perceive and act around our training. And again, like the running is supposed to be, in my mind, is a vehicle for self-expression, expressing, you know, parts of you, aspects of yourself, your values, your why, you know, what all of these things that we've talked about. And so, you know, your race strategy, like, should do that too. Like, boom, like if your race strategy is like, I just want to have some fun, I'm going to bump my tunes and listen to, you know, Lizzo that you like great. Like that's, you know, that's perfect. Like that's the mindset that you want to have. You know, if you're on the other end of that spectrum and your mindset is like, I go out hard, I race to win, I'm competing, cool. Like if that's like a true reflection of you, like I support that as well. And I think that it takes a lot of self-awareness to get there.
For me, like I'm not racing to win,
sure,
you know, but it just like, I don't need to like come from a place of like, I don't feel like I'm enough, so I'm going to overcompensate by going David Goggins and like getting on Instagram and like blowing myself up and like writing 600 words about like how meaningful it is for me to get to the finish. You know, like I don't care. Like that's, you know, whatever. I'm not an overthinker about running. Everything else, yes, but like running, I'm just there to run.
Yeah, and kind of what I'm hearing, and maybe, you know, another kind of piece that people can take away from this is that, you know, you kind of have like a hierarchy of the way things work out there, and like fun is like what leads to competitiveness. Or
yes.
like that's
like,
what
I mean,
sets
they're
you
kind
up
of like
for competitiveness.
they like go hand in hand for me. Like competing is fun for me, and I compete my best when I'm having fun.
Cool. Yeah, and like that self-awareness and knowing that, I think makes a massive difference. Yeah, you know, I think that there's, gosh, so many, just like all these questions. I think like if we were to go around the horn again, like we could each pick, you know, something else to probably talk about. But you know, maybe along the same lines as what you've mentioned, Zoe, which is kind of like a little bit about that race strategy. Yeah, like like a really serious person and really competitive. And
I'm
I've
really
just,
goofy and really
yeah.
competitive.
And like, well, I've just learned that, you know, through racing, I've really learned that the process of giving myself grace, and when I see athletes doing this too, it really helps to, yeah, create like a supportive inner environment. You know, we'll go back to like the inner coach, which is something that, you know, we've talked about on many a call. But when you really kind of live that mentality where you're self-supportive, no matter what's happening out there, you're giving yourself kind of positive reinforcement. And I know like when a lot of people race, they have, you know, there's an inner dialogue that stays with them the whole time, whether that's like, I'm rocking it, I'm crushing it, listening to Lizzo, or it's like, you know, I'm grinding up this hill and I feel like crap. You know, there's, and everything in between. I have really learned that the more you have this like almost like automatically kind inner dialogue, the more success that you have at these races. And so like that's just like a huge process oriented goal for me in my events, which, you know, anybody who's coached with me knows my philosophy that process oriented goals pave the way for performance goals.
Mhm.
So without having these smaller kind of like little things that help to kind of like create these stepping stones to get to the performance goals, you will almost, you know, you'll never have sustainability in leveling up on those performance goals year after year.
Yeah, I always find it absurd when someone's like, my goal is to run a 6:20 50K. And I'm like, well, how are you going to, like, what are you, like, just saying that or writing it down does not make it happen. Like, what is your game plan for executing on? And that's like different than a race strategy, right? Like that, I think is totally separate. Like, but you can figure out like, okay, I want to maybe finish this race in like this certain amount of time. Like, how do I set goals along the way that facilitate that specific outcome rather than saying like, well, I want this outcome and I have no clue how I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, you got to reverse engineer
I
your
think
checkpoints.
that's so important. And, you know, for me, something that I've learned is that like that number one process oriented goal is default inner coach the whole time. You know, something feels hard. No, it doesn't. It feels smooth, whatever. I have like an exact response that I pre-program, and it's just, it's totally, automatic now and feels very genuine. It's something that I've cultivated through a lot of failures and very tough inner criticism, and would recommend for everybody. And I tell my athletes, when you put down a race specific performance goal next to your race, I write right next to it, I love this, but what are your process oriented goals? Because without those, that goal becomes really difficult to achieve. I see Kylee nodding her head, and I know that, you know, maybe from a nutrition standpoint, and also from a coaching standpoint, you know, that those small steps are super important. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Kylee.
I mean, the main thing is that when I think over the last year and a half with my nutrition athletes, I used to take like a, you know, single session approach and would have an initial session, and then 5 weeks later we would have a follow-up. And when I was doing that, it was very, I felt like the athletes I was working with were very like, give me everything at one time and I need to focus on everything. And then it just leads to overwhelm. And then and then the implementation is not occurring. They might take like one or two things from that, but then it's not even like tailored specifically towards them and not sustainable. So doing kind of like going along with what you're saying, breaking it down into more like digestible pieces, and then having that process that builds from a nutrition standpoint too, goes along with the running piece, and in the fact that that allows for people to just like have that focus. If something's not working, you can adjust that a little bit. And then the next week you focus on, you know, what can I do next to build on this, et cetera. So I think it just makes it more of a lifestyle and more sustainable than just like, here you go, dump everything on you and try to figure it out.
I think something we've been talking about lately is how, like, for most people, they know everything they need to know. The barrier to like between them and success isn't like lack of information, it's lack of implementation. It's an inability to systematize the knowledge they have, right? Like Kylee can tell you to eat 100 grams of protein or more every day. We can tell you to get 8 hours of sleep in order to run slow. And like probably everyone on this call knows that. And the reason they're not doing it is because they've failed to set up those systems for making it happen. And they just assume, well, I know it, therefore it will happen, rather than focusing on like, how do I like actually like turn this into a behavior change? Like, I know consistency is important, but like, what am I doing every day to not just say, I know this is important, but to like live that in my life and like build behaviors on the knowledge you have.
Yeah, boom. 2 awesome rewind moments right there. Pause, rewind, think about that. Those are, I mean, if I don't even need to say anything more, or else they'll just take away from how good that
We
stuff
have no
was.
more information to give. Take what we have given you and do anything with it.
I mean, this is why you have coaches to help you build those habits.
Like, you know, job security, like it is like behavior change is hard. Like we were trying to list like 3 behaviors we've like actually changed in the past year. And it was like tough. And we know a lot, probably too much, you know? I think that like focusing on the fundamentals and focusing on those big behavior changes, and like, again, like Kylee can tell you to eat more iron rich foods. Like we all know what we should, you know, do to like boost, you know, whatever, to like eat more healthfully. But until you like figure out like how you're going to meal plan to make that happen, or like figure out how you're going to build your day to prioritize, to like make sure the training happens, like that knowledge isn't worth anything until you put it into actual practice. And like, that's hard. And that's what coaching is for. Like, if it was easy to just run easy and like do strides sometimes, like then coaching wouldn't really exist.
Absolutely. Let's not put ourselves out of the job here. All right, let's move on to another fantastic question. What is something you as a coach have seen your athletes learn about themselves through training for a recent race or event?
Adequate fueling is key. I know it's not like necessarily like the deepest thing, but like, I don't know, I feel like people always go out like, I want to like dig deep and like get to know myself. Like that's all great, but you're not gonna be able to do that if you're not fueling correctly. Like, again, nail the fundamentals and then like find God later.
Kylee.
That was going to be mine, because I've had some athletes like think that they can go into an event like not really practicing their fueling, even though multiple times, you know, we may have chatted about it in the log, and then have kind of an epic failure because of fueling. And so then seeing them actually fuel and practice that and then successfully execute. So, I mean, hate to copy it, but it's like seriously one of the biggest things that I've seen with my athletes.
And like, I feel like so many people are like, well, I'm really tough. And like everyone on our team like is pretty tough, but like mental toughness doesn't mean shit if you're literally not putting gas in the tank. You know, like you might have the best, toughest, most resilient car on earth, but when that tank is empty, it's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You can't like mental toughness your way out of like a biological fact. And I get really bored of trying to see people do that.
I know. Gosh, and they almost set themselves up for these like crazy vision like quests because of the lack of fueling, which then creates a cycle where they're like, wow, see how I rose up to that moment. I'm like, but
or like they go like, I don't know, there's definitely like a personality type that like wants everything to be like an epic quest, and like that's not me. I like
to feel good
control. I don't need like, my life is chaos enough. Like I go, and this is like strength, but like I go to do ultras to like try to exert some control in the world and then get more comfortable with the things I can't control. But yeah, I definitely like, you know, I think that like you see people learn a lot of emotional lessons, but I think that tends to be like, oh, when I'm, again, like when you're kind to yourself and you treat your body well and you eat well and you sleep well, like all those things matter a lot more than being like tough or like wearing a whoop or, you know, like any blood test or whatever. Like just like taking care of yourself and being a good person are really good things you can do in training. And I love watching people like start to understand that.
Absolutely. My answer to this question, what is something that I've learned or athletes have learned about themselves, I think in the lead up to a race or through a race, is you don't have to do as much as you think to be successful at these things.
Often you have to do way less than you think.
Yeah. And I think just so many people second guess themselves. The training's not enough. I'm not, you're not enough. I'm not enough. Even like I'm not giving them enough coaching and things like that, which, sometimes makes my head just go round and round. But in the end, you don't need, and I've seen this time and time again where people are making these realizations, you don't need to do as much as you think. And the act of overthinking is it's so natural, right? Like as humans, we all have this some kind of like pre-program to like overthink, and we all have these false reference points that we're looking at, and we feel like we have to do more to be successful, especially in ultra running, especially in these really long ultras. And the fact of the matter is you don't. And every time you read the Rad Weekend update, you're seeing 20 athletes who are starting to realize like you don't have to, like, it's okay to miss a run or two. You don't have to, do a 50-mile run in order to run a 50-mile race. I mean, like, I know some of this stuff feels obvious to more experienced runners, but it's really not that obvious for a lot of people on the team and a lot of people who will end up on this team. You don't have to do as much as you think. Consistency and small bouts of training over time make the biggest difference. And, we ask for a year, but I really ask for 5 years. That's how long.
I feel like
you
5-year
really want
contract
this
would
stuff
be-
to work for you. You've got to be willing to like get to 500 days in the log, get to 1,000 days in the log. I'm at like, I don't know, 1,600 days in my training log, and was training long before that too. So, these things take a lot of time, but there are a lot of really small steps over time. It's not these big leaping moments that get you.
I did 12 really hard weeks and now I'm an amazing athlete. Like, awesome.
Yeah.
Give me 1,200 more.
Right. And again, it's, I think, and I've been dealing with this a lot with a few of my newer athletes. The tendency as an athlete to want to receive all of this validation and information from a coach in one check-in. I'll refer back to the moment that Kylee mentioned. If we give you all of the information now, becomes extremely hard to implement that all in 1 week, say between one Saturday long run to the next. A good coach takes the most important, what they feel is the most important piece of information from a check-in and provides you feedback on that. Not every single point that you've made in the check-in, because implementing all of those small changes is overwhelming. It's very difficult, as Zoe mentioned.
Yeah, bad coaching would be like, wake up and live a different life tomorrow. Right, like, cool, great feedback. Thanks.
I like, for me as a coach, like, yeah, performance breakthroughs are great. I love it. I mean, that's what we're here for, that, for the PRs and all of that. But I think even more important is when athletes have those perspective shifts where they realize like, this is so much about repetition. It's about doing what I did today, tomorrow, and the day after. And if something gets derailed, I take a deep breath and quickly right the ship again as best as I can with the tools that I have available, and use the support and implement things in a small way consistently over time. I mean, that is where the success really starts to happen. And often when we're doing that, it's so hard because we don't feel like there's enough breakthroughs happening. There's not enough tangible breakthroughs. every week, every day. But running is like that. And when you do these things, the small things every day, you don't realize what's happening behind the scenes at a cellular level, at, with your muscle fibers, with your heart, all of these things that are changing, but they don't change in 6 days, 7-day training cycle. They're changing over many months and many years. So give yourself that time. Do you think we got time for one more? Finish this off.
Yeah.
We'll go for it.
Yeah. I feel like the lesson I learned, like I tend to effort really hard.
Do you want to say what the question is?
Oh, this last one. Isn't that what you're talking about?
No.
Oh, you've learned as a coach. Oh,
yeah.
What is something you've learned as a coach or athlete that you've taken into life outside of running and training? Yeah. I was thinking about this on my long run yesterday. So I've been working really hard on an essay. I'm trying to do more interesting, intellectually challenging creative writing rather than just here's how to build your base, because that is boring to me. And I want to challenge myself athletically and intellectually in life. So I've been working on this kind of challenging essay. And I was just I kind of spent too much time with it. What I was actually trying to say was getting lost in the way I was trying to say it. It definitely started to sound like this is someone trying to prove how smart they are, not someone who knows they're smart and has something interesting to say and just wants to say it. And so I had to take some time away from the essay, and I was doing my workout yesterday and I changed my watch to be a stopwatch, to just do a countdown on my intervals rather than no pace, no distance, literally just you have 20 seconds remaining in this interval. And I had the best workout ever because I was able to apply the guardrails I needed to focus on the feedback that was most important. And I got rid of the feedback that incentivizes incorrect behaviors like pace or distance. And I realized that when I'm able to focus on what I'm doing in the moment, and I'm less focused on effort hard, the number one way I can assure I'm going to slow down during a workout is trying to run fast. Anytime I try to run fast, my workouts are always slower. They suck. They're bad. I end up doing everything I can to not walk. And that's not great. And then yesterday I was just usually I do workouts on a Wednesday and I'm going to do this one on a Thursday. So I know I'm going to be tired. So I just need to take it easier and really focus on just running a sustainable effort. It was the fastest workout I've done in months, just because I was totally focused on just do it, just get it done. Don't overthink it. Don't think about the effort. Just think about what you need to do to complete the workout. And it was making me think about how in my writing, when I just focus on oh, I just want to actually write this sentence well, rather than I want to write a piece that's gonna get shared on Twitter. When I focus on the wrong incentives, I end up writing shitty things. I end up creating bad work. It's not very intellectually interesting. And it's not that challenging to me as a writer because it's very easy to make the internet happy. And it's very hard to write something that's compelling or interesting or makes people think. So I'm learning how to apply blinders and put better guardrails up in my creative work so that I incentivize doing the work I actually want to do and not efforting harder.
Awesome, man. I love that. Don't effort harder.
Don't effort harder.
Kylee, what's something that you've learned?
It's probably going to be similar to the things we talked about earlier, but I would say that remembering that the process and the build up can lead to great things. So with my business, being patient with starting a business and knowing that there's always going to be maybe different steps that can help kind of grow you to your end goal or get you to where you want to be. And so that's really helped me that stay patient throughout the process with my business. And then with running too, it's enjoying that process and making sure you don't get too ahead of yourself. Be I'm not where I want to be yet, so.
Gosh, that's great. I think running just provides such a microcosm, really, which is the whole deal. You guys know.
Boom.
I think has been illustrated, just through the context and the content of this entire call, really. I gotta I'll piggyback off of you a little bit, Kylie, but I think something that I've really learned as an athlete that just translates directly over into life is just I think the practice of patience and thoughtfulness. Just trying to take that step back before making either a business decision or, giving very, specific coaching advice. If the athlete's having a tough moment, whatever it is, taking that step back, processing some thoughts before making any decisions. That's not the way I approach my racing. That's the way I approach my training. And that's, really fundamentally one of the ways that I approach everything I do in life. And so, those two things kind of work just hand in hand really nicely. Anyways, we're out of time, and thanks so much for listening. I hope that you guys got plenty out of this. I know that at least for me, and it sounded like for Zoe and Kylie as well, like this was just a really great, just a great call. Great opportunity for building more self-awareness and to do some deep thinking, and then to try to articulate those thoughts in a way that is tangible to you guys. So hoping for more of this. If this brought up anything for you all, or if you have any questions that might have come up as a result of listening to this, please fire us an email. We'd love to get some of those questions compiled for 2022 community calls.
Yay!
Last call is going to be 4:00 on Monday. I hope you guys can come. We're really looking forward to it. We're glad that so many of you guys are able to join us today. Take care. Bye. Stay warm.
Stay warm.